This is your Thursday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Glad to have you guys back for another day here on the podcast. Got some stuff to talk about here today. Some sad news out of Minnesota sports. Marion Barber III found dead Wednesday in Texas. A former Gophers great running back. His post-career was marked by difficulty, and of course now the ultimate tragedy in his passing. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Some of the reaction from around the Gophers and from around the league. And one thing that I found to be a little bit troubling in the way this is being responded to. Got to talk about the Lynx a little bit. They fell to 2-8. That is not getting better this year. Last year, remember, they started 0-4 and then all of a sudden immediately turned things around. This year, I don't feel like the turnaround is coming. That's a big hole to dig, so we'll get into that latest loss. And we'll get to some Josh Donaldson stuff, the fallout from his comments, the Jackie Robinson stuff with Tim Anderson of the White Sox. It continues because Josh Donaldson just can't seem to be quiet or get it. So we'll talk about Josh Donaldson here in a minute. But first, what did I miss? Let's start off with the Twins. Lost again to Detroit, shut out again by Detroit. And, overall record still looks good, 30-22. But look at the lineup they put out there in Wednesday's game. A lot of guys, either hurt on the COVID list, getting days off, things like that. Here was the lineup in this game. Leading off, Kyle Garlick, then Gary Sanchez, Jorge Polanco, Gio Urshela, Trevor Larnach, Jose Miranda, Ryan Jeffers, Jorge Palacios, and then Nick Gordon. That's if you're wondering why they got 2 hits, why they didn't score a run in this game. It's not a mystery. When you're missing a lot of your best players, you got no Carlos Correa, no Byron Buxton in that game, no some of your other better hitters. You got no Alex Kirilloff still not in there, Royce Lewis not in there. You didn't have Luis Arias in this game. A lot to worry about a little bit here, especially like we've talked about with that big swing coming up against the AL East here pretty soon. The Twins have feasted on the American League Central this year so far. Even though they lost these last 2 to Detroit, they've been very good against the American League Central. I believe 17-10 still in the division. Just about 500 outside of the division, I believe, is their record. So they're going to need to take advantage of some of these games more. They really need to win today's game, probably to get some momentum back, to get themselves feeling better heading into that 9-game stretch against the AL East. But I feel like we're kind of at a tipping point of the season. They really need to kind of right the ship, get back into some better pitching, get the lineup going a little bit. 2 hits, no runs. It's never going to get it done. But it's not a mystery when they don't have their best players out there, when they're not playing well, when they're not, they don't have a full complement of their lineup, things like that. It's going to be tough to win. Like, the team that amassed, that stretch in May where they vaulted from 4-8 to first place in the division. A lot of those guys aren't playing right now, so they need to figure out how to weather this storm and get some of those reinforcements back and get back to winning. Let me correct myself, too. I keep saying Urshela. It is Urshela. I don't know why I can't get that straight in my head, but it is not Urshela. It is Urshela. I will try to do better on that. Let me correct myself right here and right now. Speaking of Urshela, as bad as the Twins have been going here lately, at least they don't have Josh Donaldson on their team anymore. They could not wait to sign him a few years ago, and they could not wait even more to get rid of him once they kind of figured out what he was all about. And he just kind of showed again that he still doesn't get it. We had the whole Tim Anderson stuff where he called Tim Anderson Jackie in reference to Jackie Robinson. He thought it was an inside joke. Jackie Robinson did not think so. White Sox manager Tony La Russa said it was racist, and now Donaldson's talking about it. He got suspended for a game. He appealed the discipline. And now Josh Donaldson saying he's upset that that his Yankees teammates didn't back him up with what he said. He said he's hurt by some of the things that his teammates said. Aaron Boone said, "This is just my opinion." That's the manager for the Yankees. "Just my opinion. That's somewhere he should not be going." And Aaron Judge from the Yankees said, "I just don't think it's the right thing to do there." And Josh Donaldson came back and said, "I think that was tough to hear for sure, just from the simple fact that I pride myself on being a good teammate, and everywhere I've went, every organization that I've been a part of, minus Oakland, has offered me extensions, has wanted me to stay. They showed me that they wanted me to be part of the team. Obviously, it didn't work out that way, and that's just the business end of it. And also, everywhere I went, I've won. I think part of winning is having good team chemistry, and I've taken pride everywhere I've went. I've always tried to help people try to get better." Okay, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think, I think there's a reason Josh Donaldson has worn out his welcome at various places. I'm not saying it's all on him, but obviously his style is not for everybody. He's brash, he's confrontational. Sometimes that works, but sometimes it works against you. And here's the one from Donaldson that really gets me. He said that Tim Anderson, maybe he misinterpreted the references that Donaldson was making, but he hasn't had a chance to talk to him. That Just be quiet. Just stop digging this hole. I know that's not in his nature. I know that's not how Josh Donaldson operates. He just can't let something go. He can't say that I was wrong. I'm going to move on from this. I'm going to learn from this. It's got to be somebody else misinterpreting what he said. He said, I think when it comes down to it over the last couple of years, there's been some animosity from their team towards me, talking about the White Sox, and maybe that's true. You had all the stuff last year with him accusing Lucas Giolito of benefiting from, the stuff on the ball, and I think that's fine. I think that's probably true. That doesn't change the fact that what he said was wrong, and that his own teammates aren't backing him up, and that the White Sox and Tim Anderson responded in a certain way. Sometimes you just have to say, you know what, if that many people are responding in a certain way, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I just need to stop talking and just leave it all alone, make my apology, and move on, try to learn. But I don't know if that's in Josh Donaldson's DNA. I don't think that was how he operated here with the Twins, and I think that's part of the reason they could not wait to get rid of him. And it wasn't just a straight-up salary dump. Like I said, they got Urshela, they got Gary Sanchez from the Yankees. Both those guys have had some big hits for the Twins this season, allowed them to have the flexibility maybe to go get Carlos Correa, reshaped this roster into a first-place team. Would they be a first-place team if they hadn't made that trade? Maybe. Josh Donaldson's still a very productive player, still a guy that, can work for you if you need that fire in your clubhouse. It was kind of fun last year when he was mixing it up, when he was, calling out pitchers, things like that. When he's doing things to get under an opponent's skin, sometimes that can work. But this is not a case of just getting under someone's skin. This is a case of saying something that was blatantly wrong, and you just need to move on from it. So I think the Twins at this point just have to be very happy that he is not part of their team, because this would be an ongoing issue playing the White Sox so many times this season. Instead, he is the Yankees' problem, and that is that.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake for 24/7 gaming, fun restaurants and bars, and luxurious hotel rooms. And join Club M to bask in the rewards. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
I have Ben Goessling here today on Daily Delivery, covers the Vikings for the Star Tribune. You can hear Ben and I and Andrew talk on Access Vikings during the season and during the offseason as well. And you can read all of Ben's coverage in the Star Tribune, of course, startribune.com. But we're in the middle of, OTAs, mandatory minicamp next week, Ben. It's just as we've seen the offseason go along, it feels like it's just been kind of quiet ever since they made the hires. They're installing a bunch of stuff. That kind of happens once they've made the big splashes. But from your perspective, what has stood out to you from whatever you've seen or whatever you've heard so far here?
I think the big thing for me has been the general approach Kevin O'Connell has taken, almost kind of the educational approach, the is it pedagogy or pedagogy? I never know. The way he teaches has been interesting to watch, because it has been a different approach than Mike Zimmer. There's been sort of this emphasis on, we want to minimize the time on field, but we want to make the most of the time we are out there. We're not going to have you guys in these long practices. The practices that we've been at have only been about 75 minutes. So they've been fairly quick, and there's been an emphasis on let's take care of your bodies. And I was even talking a little bit with Harrison Smith last night at Adam Thielen's charity softball game. And he said, as you get to be an older player, it's kind of nice to not have to go on field and do as much to try to help take care of your body. So there's been that approach, but it's also let's make the most of the time that we have on the field, the class on the grass, as O'Connell keeps saying. And he talked today too about when we're going to go do things, let's make sure that we're not having to go back and relearn things in training camp or in mini camp or in next week's practice, whatever it happens to be. Let's not have to rehash things and kind of spend time doing repetitive work, because if we keep people off the field and we use the time to the best of our ability, it helps us mentally and physically. So there's been kind of an emphasis on a lot of install stuff and a lot of kind of getting the offense installed the way they wanted, and the defense. I mean, really, you're switching both of those things for the first time in quite a while. So you have to make some changes there. But the fact that they are doing it with kind of a minimum of time on field has been interesting. And I think they've done some things to try to maximize that we'll see how it pays off, but it certainly has been a strikingly different approach from what we've seen under Mike Zimmer the last 8 years.
Well, that is interesting, because you think about especially the defense. I mean, they got used to doing, anybody who's been here for any amount of time, like Eric Kendricks or Harrison Smith or anybody like that. I mean, this has got to be, this is brand new. This is the only system they've really known. Or I mean, Harrison Smith had a little bit of the Leslie Frazier defense, or before Mike Zimmer came in. But these guys who've been in here for a long time, like this is brand new. Like this is and the approach and the 3-4 and everything like that's got to be pretty different for them.
Yeah, I mean, Harrison Smith is the only guy on the defense that predates Mike Zimmer.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody else that's a veteran has been here with Mike Zimmer or was drafted when Mike Zimmer was the head coach. Eric Kendricks, Daniil Hunter. And I think we're kind of down to that really at this point in terms of the long tenured guys. Anthony Barr's gone, Everson Griffin's gone, Linval Joseph has been gone now a couple of years. So people like that Zimmer brought in are long gone, or you're down to the very, very few. So yes, it is brand new for a lot of these players. Eric Kendricks played in a 3-4 in college, but this is a different variation on it. I mean, everything is going to be a little different than what he has done in college, or certainly what he's done under Mike Zimmer. So there's a lot to learn, but the approach has been, hey, we trust you guys to be on top of things. We're not going to beat you over the head with extra practice time on field, but we have to maximize our time off the field, and we have to come in and be ready to maximize what we do when we do get out there. So it's been a lot of that. And the other thing that he talked about today, Adam Thielen made a nice catch in the red zone, which we've seen a lot of Adam Thielen in the red zone over the last few years. He's, I think, second in the league in touchdowns in the red zone over the last 2 or 3 years, probably, I think, just behind Devontae Adams. So he and Kirk Cousins have had a lot of good things going in the red zone. He made a catch today that Kevin O'Connell said, we don't really coach Kirk to throw it there, but there has to be an ownership of this scheme beyond the way we teach it. And there are certain times where, hey, we don't coach it this way, but we give players the freedom to say, if I'm comfortable with this and I think I can make a play this way, you have the green light to do that. So I think that is going to be different in and of itself, especially on offense, because there's been so many times where it's been, don't do this, don't you dare do that, and go make plays or else within that kind of a structure. And I think there's a level of trust and a level of freedom. I mean, even last night, I was sitting at the softball game. Kevin O'Connell was there to throw out the first pitch. Threw it underhanded, by the way. So, keeping with softball.
It's softball. Yeah.
It's softball, yes. And the catcher didn't have any gear on, but it's a former quarterback. I thought he could have thrown an overhand. Whatever. Anyway, he's sitting along the rail with Kirk Cousins. And they're, I think talking about softball, just chit-chatting a little bit for a minute. But then it looked to me like it turned into a fairly detailed football conversation. And they were sitting there just kind of chatting about ideas. I wasn't able to overhear it, but I was sitting close enough to kind of observe it. And it was, a lot of, hey, what do you think about this? What do you like about this? Kind of throwing ideas back and forth. And even that was a pretty striking difference from where we were. I mean, if you think about the relationship that Cousins and Zimmer had, the fact that it took 4 years and Cousins basically going to Zimmer and saying, I want to sit down and watch film with you. This stuff is happening a little bit more organically, I think, than it was. And I think they're banking on all of this working out when they get to the fall and things actually matter.
Cousins has to like some of that, but he's also kind of this, I feel like he likes the known a lot more than he likes the unknown in some cases. And, I picked up on a little bit of when he talked, I think last week about, having to learn all this stuff over again and it's kind of like going back to school. Where do you think he's at with more freedom, but also that translates into maybe more responsibility and more expectations to a certain degree?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it does. But I also, he had a number of things that he said in the last couple of years about either wanting more control in the offense or wanting more freedom in the line of scrimmage, and that I don't think he had. And he's also talked about, I think he talked with Mark Craig last fall about how coaches sometimes have you so systematized that you're sitting out there overthinking everything. And I think part of it with Cousins is he is, whether you want to use the word people pleaser or not, I don't know, but he's certainly aware of what people want him to do and how he is being perceived based on those types of guidelines. So I do think if he's in a system where they say, hey, we're going to do a little bit more of what you like, and you've got the green light to do things the way you want it, yes, it's freedom, but it's also a little bit more autonomy, I think, to have control of what happens. And if it's something that he is comfortable with and he says, this is naturally what I want to do, rather than, well, I have to check that against maybe what a coach wants me to do. I think that's going to help. I think he feels like it's going to help. I certainly, every sense I've gotten this year is that they think that the people in his corner think this is going to be really good for him. And we'll see. I mean, a guy that's going into his 11th NFL season, how much is he going to change at this point? I think you're right to be skeptical about that, because that's a lot of time that you haven't seen a lot of changes, and the burden is on him to say that it's going to be different. But this is also one of the first times in a while that he's had a coach that seems to have some trust in him, seems to want to empower him. That's been quite a long time for him. And he is the type, I think, that can benefit from those interpersonal relationships and feeling like those are in a better spot than they were previously.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And it's just interesting. It's just new. Everything is so new with all of this, including they have a new receiver, right? They just signed somebody and they might be down a guy too, from what you're telling me.
Yeah, they signed Albert Wilson last night, former Chiefs receiver, former Dolphins receiver. And it perhaps not coincidentally was alongside Amir Smith-Marset, not practicing today, with what O'Connell said was kind of a precautionary thing, called it a lower leg injury. And I think we've seen him kind of walking around with a boot or a sleeve. But I think it sounds like he'll be back in the near future, at least from what O'Connell said today. But yeah, the timing is probably not coincidental. I mean, O'Connell said, well, it's a player we liked, and it doesn't really have that much to do with that. But generally, when teams sign players at this point, right, you do wonder about it. So, I mean, that's certainly worth watching. I think they feel like they probably still need a fourth receiver. KJ Osborne certainly has made himself the number 3, but especially when you're going to play 3 wide receivers, and when Adam Thielen's had some nagging injuries, you do need more people to contribute there, whether it's Jalen Naylor, whether it's Amir Smith-Marset, whether it's Albert Wilson coming in here. So I think that move is probably with an eye toward, hey, we need a little bit more depth, especially if we are worried about Smith-Marset in any capacity. And I think by training camp, this will, at least at this point, looks like it won't be a huge issue. That's the way they're talking about it. But yeah, it's certainly worth keeping that in mind, I think.
Now, KJ Osborne's an interesting guy now that you brought him up, because I haven't squared in my mind yet that he's a number 3 receiver yet. I had a different impression of him. I know he's done things on the field now. How do you think they view him right now? Do you think they're as high on him as his status as a number 3 might suggest?
Yeah, I do. I think he proved a lot last year. He had a lot of big catches, and I think what went with that was trust from Cousins, because we have seen Cousins at times, kind of lock on to certain receivers. And, he talks about going where his reads take him, but he also, I think, won't put balls in tight spots unless he trusts the guy he's throwing to. So we have seen the percentage of his targets over the last few years, whether it's Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs or Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson, those 2 receivers have a fairly outsized share of Cousins' targets, as opposed to some quarterbacks who maybe spread the ball around a little bit more than he has. So I think the fact that Osborne got the number of targets he did, and especially on third downs, I think you saw some plays late in the season where he was looking for Osborne on third down, or at least was comfortable trusting him to make a play in a spot where they needed a first down. That tells me he has earned some capital here. I do think that trust from Cousins goes a long way, because without it, you don't get a lot of opportunities from him to perform. I do think that matters in terms of whether he'll trust you in that spot. And the fact that Osborne made some of those plays last season makes me think he has I think the coaches have liked him. I think he's got a chance to have a larger role. Now we'll see. Is that 60 catches? I don't know if it's that. Is he turning into a big play guy every week? I don't know. But he, whether it was the deep catch in Arizona in week 2 last year or a number of the plays kind of late in the season, I think he had the big one in Carolina too. He showed up enough that I think he's here to stay. I don't think that was as much of a flash in the pan as we've maybe seen with, your Aldrick Robinsons or kind of the 1-year flashes like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Last thought for you, Ben, before we go. I mean, we're kind of getting down to it here. You got mandatory minicamp, 2 days essentially on the field next week, and then they scatter until training camp. I mean, I don't know what, 2 days next week. I'm sure they get more stuff done, but are they going to they have time to get ready for the season? It feels like everything's happening fast here.
Yeah, it is fast. It has been interesting with as late as this staff got installed, and as much as they have minimized the time on field. I mean, they could have started the offseason program a week earlier, and they could have taken mini camp, I think, a week later into the summer. So there has been a more condensed schedule. There's certainly a confidence that they can get everything done that they need to, but we're not really going to know that until training camp, or really probably until the preseason or even into the season. So I think they feel like they've maximized their time to the extent that they can. You certainly could wonder if they could have used a little bit more, but this is part of the bet now. This is that we will give you guys the freedom to live your lives and have some time on your own, but we expect you to show up and make it worth our while to give you that much time. So it's going to be interesting to see. They've got 3 days next week, but I think the last day is like a team bonding thing. So they won't be on the field that Thursday. And then they're the off-season break, not unfortunately for a tired beat writer, he's a week longer than it normally is. So, we appreciate that too. But yeah, if they don't do it, if they don't perform with it, then those things can change fairly quickly. So the proof will be in the pudding here in the next couple of months. But yeah, I think at this point they are betting on, we can empower you. We can give you a little more latitude and make it worth our while.
That certainly sounds a little bit different to me as well. Change
a little bit.
Change is the watchword here right now. Well, Ben, good stuff. Appreciate it. We'll catch up soon. All right.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mike.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Ben Goessling, talking Vikings, a little off-season stuff for them. We'll have more of that on the Access Vikings podcast here later this afternoon as well. Ben and I and Andrew will get together and talk a little bit more in depth about what's going on this offseason. But I thought Ben's stuff was interesting, just talking about Kirk Cousins in particular and some of the autonomy that he is going to have this season in terms of, being able to maybe, have his say in the offense a little bit more, maybe make some certain reads, change things like that. I don't know if that's a great idea, but I think that's something you have to do in order to find out if this is a long-term fit for you with Kevin O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell needs to know, can I trust this guy? Do we want him for more than just this year and maybe next year? Could this guy in this system be the guy that you want him to be? And, in order to do that, you have to find out what his true potential is. Again, 11th season, I think we kind of know, but maybe a different fit, a different system, a different level of autonomy and authority changes some of that narrative with Kirk Cousins. But even if it doesn't, you need to find that out so you can know what his long-term future is. Speaking of long-term future, for a while now, the long-term future for the Lynx has been very good. Right now, the prognosis is not great. 2-8, another loss for the Lynx on Wednesday. Turnovers told the story in this game. They lost to Atlanta 84-76. So that's tough. That's they had 26 turnovers. They got 20 rebounds from Sylvia Fowles. Not enough. Atlanta playing well this year. They're 6-3. They're a surprisingly good team this year. But the Lynx kind of swapping places with them, maybe in the in the standings and things like that. So 2-8 right now. They rallied a few times, but they've got to be able to to play better than that. This is just not the Lynx team that we're used to seeing right now. And I don't know if that's going to be the case for the rest of the season. Again, there's still season left. They did pull out of this skid last year, but man, 2-8 feels different this year. It feels like this is going to be a transition year. And again, a lot of reasons why this is happening. Nafisa Collier not on the court, and some of their offseason transactions not working out maybe the way they thought it would. But we'll see. They got to kind of rebuild a foundation for 2023, get this thing going the right way, because it sure feels right now like their streak of making the playoffs is going to end at 11 this season. Let us end with the cooler and the tragic story I referenced at the start of the show. Marion Barber III, former Gophers great running back, played primarily in the NFL for Dallas, found dead in Dallas area at age 38, would have been 39 in just a little over a week. Reading from the Star Tribune story, Randy Johnson, Frisco police officers responded to a welfare concern on Wednesday at what was thought to be Barber's apartment, and he was found dead there. No cause of death listed. I'll get back to that in a minute. I don't want to speculate, but I do have a little bit of a concern with the statement released by the Cowboys. But I want to get to who Marion Barber was first. Glenn Mason, former Gophers coach, quoted in Randy Johnson's story, Marion Barber was a great running back for the University of Minnesota. Everybody saw that. I saw it firsthand every day. When I heard this, I couldn't get it out of my mind what a great kid he was. He always had a smile on his face. Everything was upbeat. Everything was positive. He played for me for 4 years, never gave me a problem, not one. He was a delight to be around. Mason later saying, he was very close to Lawrence Maroney. There were characters to be around them, was a laugh a minute. And, one of the other things he said, let me just find it here really quick. It was, says, I really do feel like I've lost a family member. That's how this, Marion Barber was such a integral part of kind of the resurgence of the Gophers under Mason, that great team in 2003 that unfortunately, couldn't get over the hump in that Michigan game. You still go back to up 28-7. He had such a magnificent game in that game. They couldn't quite finish that off with Michigan's furious rally and that comeback. But, Marion Barber is such a talented player, such a reason. I think this was referenced by PJ Fleck in his statement, such a reason that a lot of people are Gophers fans these days. Now, the sad part is he's been having problems ever since retirement. And here's the statement from the Dallas Cowboys that I just have to kind of pause at for just a minute. And, I don't think it's intentional, and maybe I'm just reading this the wrong way, but here's the statement from the Dallas Cowboys. Said, heartbroken by the tragic death of Marion Barber III. Marion was an old-school, hard-nosed football player who ran with the will to win every down. And obviously it goes on to say he had passion for the game, love for his coaches and teammates. Our hearts go out to Marion's family and friends during this difficult time. Now, we will find out probably more in the days and weeks to come about what exactly happened, what was the cause of death, what his life had become after football. But I can't help but wonder how his hard-hitting style, his old-school hard-nosed style, which he was absolutely known for, how that impacted his post-football career. So for Dallas to put out that statement, kind of, I don't think we can ignore the cause and effect in how he played and perhaps how he died. And I don't want to speculate. I don't want to get too deep into that. It just worries me that we're glorifying the way he played when that might have been part of what ultimately led to his undoing. And again, we'll learn more about this as time goes on. Right now, the thing to do is mourn this loss. He was a great player. He was a great person. And this is just a tragedy for anybody involved. That will do it for today. Should be talking a lot about the Twins on Friday's show. Lavelle E. Neal III will join me on that show, Star Tribune columnist. Also get into a little bit of stuff about Timberwolves and whether or not a new arena, a new place to play is on the horizon for them. Hope you have a great rest of your day. We'll see you again on Friday.